Today we're going to start off. Uh, we're going to continue on with the causes of the Civil War. We kind of explained that during the week, so we're just going to recap everything that we looked at. All right, we're going to start off with the sectionalism or any of that part that we looked at during this week. All right, as you entered class, you should have gotten a sheet of paper. That sheet of paper is the thing that you'll be filling out and putting on your journals today. Let's continue then. Let's start. All right. All right, so we're going to look at sectionalism. What is sectionalism? Try to remember what sectionalism was. All right. It has something to do with all the regions. All the regions were, in general, somehow sectionalized and divided. Okay, today you have to copy everything in red. That's what goes on the sheet. Sectionalism, favoring the interests of one of the sections or regions over the interests of the entire country. All right, I have asked this before. All right, how can this be a major downfall for the U.S.? Major downfall. More than likely, if we are sectionalized and we kind of divided, we really think of our own region instead of the country as a whole, and we just separate and everybody has their own thing method, then more than likely we're not going to be united. Not going to be united. And that's kind of sad because the U.S. should be a united place. But even now, we look at what's going on today. Does this country look united today? I'm pretty sure you know the answer to that. But let's continue on with sectionalism. All right, so if you look at the PowerPoint right here, I just gave you the West. The West, we saw that it was sectionalized. There's gold. There's the Book of Mormon. That means that there's Mormons, or that's a religious group. We have harbors. We have ports. All of that in general. We have Asian people, Chinese people. All right, railroads pass through there as well. All right, so that is the West. All right, so let's look at the North now. What do we have in the North? So in the North, we have something pretty well thought out. The North right here. Let me see if I could kind of make it just so you can see them. Oh, incorrect. The North is filled up of many things. It is sectionalized in its own way. It has factories, railroads, canals, and we have urbanization and tariffs, right? It's industry in the North. So it's going to be different from the South no matter what. This right here is one of the reasons we become divided. Not just because there's factories in the North, it's because there's not the same in the South. Right? We're already different. They're not going to mesh together all the time. Right. So we have more of industry, cities, urbanization, and canals in the North. Now, remember, what do we have in the South? In the South, we have the opposite. The opposite of cities is agriculture. We have slavery. All right. Slavery is in the North, but not as abundant, not that much. And we have things like the cotton gin to help us with our agriculture, all right, our fields, our plantations. But slavery is the biggest thing that we see in the South that ends up being one of the causes of the Civil War. All right, and then we have hated tariffs, right? This is where states' rights come into play because many of the Southerners did not like paying taxes or extra taxes. They thought it was horrible for them. They said the South was not going to prosper. So right there we could say states' rights for hated tariffs. Okay. So let's continue on. That is sectionalism. We already saw all these three regions. They are not united whatsoever. They all have their own agenda. They all feel that they could do their own thing without ever discussing with other regions. So let's look at the other two, slavery and states' rights. Slavery and states' rights. All right, so you guys have to remember, as we expand more and more, we're going to have to bring up the issue of slavery. Do we want slavery? Do we not want it? first ones that we look at is Missouri. Missouri wants to enter the U.S. Problem is, are they going to be a slave state or are they going to be a free state? That is the major problem that they have to look at. All right, what do you think the South is going to say? The South is, of course, going to want slavery. Meanwhile, the North is going to oppose it. So we start to see here already, guys. We start to see that it becomes unbalanced, and we start to see that it becomes an issue. Are we going to fight for it or are we not? Up to this point, we've been avoiding it. So what are we going to do? Are we going to fight or not? So this is the Missouri Compromise, guys. One more time, we avoided going to war. Instead, we decided to do a compromise. Remember, if you did the homework, you should know what a compromise is, right? You kind of meet in the middle of the compromise. You don't get everything you want, but you get at least something. So the whole thing of the compromise is that Missouri, right here, in red and striped, becomes a slave state. So it enters as a slave state. So now we have 11 slave states and 10 free states. That doesn't seem fair. So what eventually ends up happening is the North decides if Missouri is going to be a slave state, we have to be even. So the compromise also says that Missouri becomes a slave state, and they make the new state of Maine, which becomes a free state. So, copy the red. I just kind of explained it. Missouri was admitted as a slave state, Maine as a free state, and all of the Louisiana Purchase is now kind of slave free, but we're still kind of distinguishing it. All right, get that done. Let's continue. Next one we're looking at is the Compromise of 1850. But before moving to the next slide, I forgot to tell you guys must copy the map. It's not, you don't have to do it perfect. Just kind of sketch it out, just like this map. Draw the sketchy lines on Missouri and Maine. Kind of see if you could dart on one side and leave the other one kind of blank. But you must copy the map. Let's continue now. The Compromise of 1850, because I told you guys, we're just compromising. We haven't decided if we are going to end up having slavery or not. In general, we're trying to avoid the subject of slavery all this time. But the Compromise of 1850 kind of makes it a little worse, because now California wants to enter as a state. But one more time, the subject comes up. Should they enter as a free state or a slave state? Eventually, they enter as a free state. But because of that, we have something called the Fugitive Slave Act. The Fugitive Slave Act. In the Fugitive Slave Act, we see slaves are being, now we could say, hunted. They have to return to their old slave owners, even if they're free. Even if they ran away and got their freedom, they must return. All right, so the North got something out of it because they got California. It's a free state. But the South had to get something out of it, and they got the Fugitive Slave Act. You in your mind think, is that fair? Because we're still avoiding the subject of should slavery be free or not. Slaves or not in general. We're just compromising right now, and that sucks. Okay, the next one we have is the Kansas-Nebraska Act. I'll let you guys copy this down, and let me explain it. The Kansas-Nebraska Act was another thing that we once again, we tried to avoid the topic of actually saying no more slavery. So what we do is kind of another compromise, but we just call it the Kansas-Nebraska Act, where Kansas and Nebraska want to enter into the U.S. But the topic comes up again, slavery or no slavery. So what they decide to do is something called popular sovereignty, and we've talked about it, where the people in the states were allowed to decide if they wanted slavery by voting. This led to many, many, many troubles, right? Because if you look at it, the people in the north end up going to Kansas. The people in the south end up going to Kansas. What happens there? We start to see that they do something called the Bleeding Kansas, where people from the north and people from the south end up killing each other. They end up killing each other. Copy this down. We go to the next one. Now, this is just a rebellion. We kind of looked at it. Nat Turner, he was one of the rebels. He was an African American slave that killed 65 people. Then we have John Brown. John Brown raided Harper's Ferry with a slave rebellion. He was later on executed. Both these guys were executed. All right. Now that you are done, we're going to continue on in class.